Hi guys, Nick again for Creation Army TV. Thanks for watching, and as always I ask you to subscribe to my channel. I'm always putting up new content whenever I can. And if you haven't already, go check it out. I've got lots of other great tutorials. I go pretty in depth with the appearance palette. I do a video on graphic styles. I just finished a new tutorial on use of the symbols palette. And all of these videos will help you greatly in your workflow with, especially if you're new to Illustrator. Very important to watch these introductory videos on how all the some of the palettes work. Today we'll be talking about alignment and how you can integrate the alignment palette into your workflow. Alignment is very important when you're in the world of graphic design. Oftentimes things need to line up perfectly and be distributed perfectly, and doing it all by eyeballing it, doing it by hand can be painstaking and difficult. So why not let the align palette do the work for you? So I'm going to take some of the mystery out of the align palette and distribution as well. So you're making your artwork, and no matter how complex or simple your illustration or project is, you might run into a situation where you go ahead and you have many instances of, for instance, this star symbol. It's right here in my symbols palette, and it's kind of all over the place. And if I try to, let's say I want them to all be aligned through the center, the horizontal center, I'll draw sort of a horizon line right now so you can see what I'm talking about. If I draw this horizontal line through all of the stars, you see that they're all sort of located at a different place on this horizon line. I can move it to the bottom of this left star over here, and of course they're all just at different heights, different y values. So how do we make them all the same y value as, let's say, this first one here? Let's say you're in your piece of artwork, this star is exactly where it needs to be, and all the rest of them need to be in the same place. Well, the old way of doing it is to come up to your transform palette, find the Y position, and copy that number, and then select your next object and paste the number in, the Y value, so that the star moves up to the same Y value, and then these are aligned. That is a horrible, slow way of doing things, and I beg you not to do that. We have to be more efficient as designers. Another better way to do it is to turn on your smart guides. That's Command U or Control U on a PC. Also, I think it's in the View menu. It's one of these. There it is, Smart Guides. So if you turn on Command U, then every time you mouse over something, I'll zoom in here, every time you mouse over something you'll see a halo appear around it, and every time you move it around you'll see these little green lines pop out everywhere. These little green lines and the snapping, you see how the stars actually stops moving when I align it with other things or move it around. Those little green lines represent little guides that tells you, hey, you're now aligned with the center registration point of this other object. So those can help you out. Sometimes, because I'm dealing with the symbol, it points to the center line. But if you're just dealing with two squares, let's say I've got these two squares and I want them to be aligned to top. I want their tops to be aligned. I can move this, and you see how the green line appears at the bottom. But if I keep moving the square down, now it appears at the top, and basically the smart guides are just telling me that the tops are now aligned, and Illustrator snaps it nicely for me. So that's kind of a good way of doing it, by eyeballing and using the mouse. Okay, but you're still doing your work in an inefficient way, because what if I have 35 of these boxes that I have to line up? I wouldn't want to sit here and do this mouse move 35 times. It's 35 clicks, and it adds up to a lot of time wasted during a project. So I'll go ahead and delete these. So how do I make all of these stars all at once align to a certain object? That's where the align palette comes in, and I have it right here on the right side of my screen. So to align a number of objects at once, more than one object, more than two objects at once, all you have to do is just draw a square around them and just select all of them. Now I have all of these stars selected. And you have to look at your artwork, and again, you have to say which one of these stars is in the correct position. That object will be your anchor object or your key object. Let's say it's this star right here, where my mouse is hovering right now. Let's say I want all of these stars to align perfectly to this particular star. To do that, you first make your selection. I've made my selection. And then click once on the object that you want to make your anchor. So I'll click on it once, and you can see that a thick red box has now appeared around it. And in the Align palette, you'll see that there's a little key icon, Align to, and then this key. This is your key object, or your anchor. In other words, when I hit any of the Align buttons, this object will not move, everything else will move around it. So I'm going to now align them vertical align center, and I'll just hit this button. By the way, these buttons are little diagram representations of what will happen if you press them. So for instance, this very top left button right here, which is called horizontal align left, will mean that your objects will be aligned to the left side of the key object. Or if you do the one that I'm about to press, which is vertical align center, that means that objects will move up and down and be aligned to the very center of this object right here, where the little crosshair is. So I'll go ahead and press this button, and you'll see everything align vertically to it. Vertically meaning they moved vertically up and down along the y-axis, in other words, so that they could accomplish their alignment with the key object. Now at any time, if you decide that you selected the wrong key object, I'll hit undo one time. I have my selection, I selected this star, but I say to myself, oh whoops, I didn't mean to make that my key object. You can just go over to any other object and click it one time, and the key is now moved over to the object that you just clicked. If, say you made a mistake, you don't want that to be your key object, this far left star. I want this star to be my key object. I'll just click on that. Now it's my key, and if I click vertical align center again, now all the stars are vertically aligned to the horizontal center of this star. So it's very easy to select a number of objects, select which one you want to be the anchor or the key, and then use one of the align properties, one of these 6 buttons right here. You can also you can press any one of these buttons a second time. For instance, I just clicked vertical align center, which moved them all up and down. But if I want all of these objects to be basically in the same exact place as this star, I would want them to move to the left and some of these to the right, so that they all lived in the same exact place right here. Well, I still have this object selected as my key, so I will press as a second button press on the Align palette. I will press horizontal align center, and the little diagram represents that all of these will move and be aligned along the center line here. I'll press it, and it looks like only one star, but really what has happened is all of these stars have now moved this way, and these two moved this way to the right, so that everything was perfectly aligned with this star. So that works. I mean, in this example it doesn't work so great because they're all exactly identical in size and color, but if one of them is like this and it's maybe a little bit bigger and it's screened back in opacity, then I'm going to select them all, select my key object, and align them all. Now you can see that this one is, underneath, and it's still got its rotation and opacity property. So there are times when you do have to put things all at the same place. So you would just hit align center and align center. So that's how you can align objects to each other by creating key objects or anchor objects. I'll hide this layer, and we'll talk about aligning to artboard. A number of versions ago in Illustrator, I believe it was CS3 or CS4, Adobe introduced multiple artboards into the workflow, meaning this whole blue area here is one artboard, and any artwork I put on here will print or will be exported. But anything outside the artboard in this gray area, or the transparency grid, will not be included in my final print or my PDF. But a few years ago they introduced multiple artboards. So I use the artboard tool here, and I've got artboard number 2, 3, and 4. And sometimes you'll have you'll have your layout on the large artboard here, and you might need a smaller layout here. Maybe this represents the Apple iPhone version of your design, and maybe this one represents the Android version of your design, and this one might represent your YouTube thumbnail. But you need all of these sort of same artwork to appear on these other artboards. So you can actually align objects to the artboard instead of aligning them to themselves or each other. So I've got my star once again, and it is now perfectly centered vertically and horizontally to this artboard. And so how do we accomplish that? I'll go ahead and delete these arrows for now. So you made your artwork, it's over here somewhere, and you like how it looks. Maybe it's complex artwork, maybe it's a group of objects or whatever it might be. In this case, it's just one star. And you've drawn it over here carefully, you like the way it looks, you group it all together, but you want it to live in the exact center of the artboard. You can do that very easily with the Align palette, but there is one extra button you have to press before you align anything. You want to make your selection. I have my star selected. Come over to the Align palette and come to this lower right button, Align To. And right now, there's a little representation of the artboard. There's a little thumbnail of the artboard right there. And if you press this button, you'll have 3 options. Align to selection, which is what we just did in the previous example. Align to key object, which is grayed out for now. We'll get to that. And then the last one, actually I believe it's the default in Illustrator, is align to artboard. So I will just leave it checked on align to artboard, and you'll notice now I don't have to select any key objects like I did in the last example. I can just select just one thing. And if I wanted to send it to the center of the artboard, I'll just hit horizontal align center, and that moved it to the horizontal perfect center of this artboard. And then I'll hit vertical align center, and it moved it down to the perfect vertical center of the artboard. And so the registration point for this symbol is now dead center on this artboard. And it doesn't matter how big or how small the artboard is, when you hit those 2 buttons, Illustrator and the Align palette will send it directly to the center. Now, how do we get it on the center of another artboard? Well, the simple answer is just to copy, paste, and then just move it over here, right? And then hit those buttons again. But you can save yourself a couple of steps. I'll just hit align, and notice that it did, in fact, align to that artboard. You can also align to the bottom of the artboard, or to the left, or to the right, or top. It doesn't matter. As long as you keep hitting these buttons, it will align to the artboard it's on. So for the example I'm about to show you, which can save you a little bit of time, you're going to also need to open your artboards palette, and that is under Window and then Artboards, right under the Appearance palette. If you don't have it open, I recommend it. In my workflow, where I work at a visual effects company, I do a lot of storyboarding, and I sometimes can have an Illustrator file open with 20, 30 different artboards. And whether they're all the same size, or whether they're all aligned or not, there are many times, when I need to take one piece of identical artwork and paste it onto several artboards at a time, and I need to do this very quickly. So I'll show you how. I'll take this star. Again, as an example, I'm going to copy and paste it. Now, when you just hit Control V or Command V, your object just appears in the middle of your screen. This is literally the dead center of my monitor. So if you move your view and you paste again, it always pastes to the center of your monitor. All right, but if you hit paste to front, which is Command F or Control F, then it will always paste in the exact same place, and this star is now the duplicate. All right, so keep that in mind too. I'll tell you why that's important in a minute. All right, so with the artboard palette open, all right, we're on artboard number 1. So how do I get this over to here? I can just, drag it with the mouse. But I want it to be aligned to the center of this artboard. If I hit align horizontal and align vertical right now, it actually sends it to the left and down, and it's still on artboard 1. But you don't have to actually move it with your mouse to get it over to the center of artboard 2 or 3 or 4. All you have to do is click on your object, have it selected, and then from the artboards panel, select artboard number 2 one time. Just click on it once. Definitely don't double click on it because your entire view will change. Your zoom level will change, everything will change. And then use the align palette. Make sure you're on align to artboard and hit align horizontal and align vertical. And you'll notice that that star, which was on artboard 1 a second ago, now just got moved to the right and up, and it is now perfectly centered with artboard number 2. If you realize that you made the wrong selection there of artboards and you actually wanted to put it here down on artboard number 4, all you have to do is select artboard number 4 with one click and then click vertical align center, and it actually moves all the way down to the vertical center of artboard number 4 with no careful copy pasting, no accident prone dragging around with the mouse, just a couple simple button presses with smart use of the artboards and the align palette. What I was about to say in my last example when I was talking about pasting to front comes into play here. Paste to front and paste to back, which is Command B, are very useful if you want to paste something and have it still live in the exact same location. And that comes into play with this next tip. If I move this star over to this artboard and make it small, if I like where it is on this artboard and I want it to be in exactly the same place on these 2 artboards, I can do it 2 ways. Number 1 is by clicking a lot and pasting to front a lot, and I'll do that right now. I'll choose this yellow star, I'll hit copy, which is Command C, and then I will choose artboard number 3. Watch the perimeter of artboard number 3 change when I click on the artboard. In the artboard palette, I now have 3 highlighted, and you'll notice that the perimeter of the artboard changed to this more solid black line. That means that that is the active artboard, and then if I paste to front, I will actually be pasting on that artboard. It didn't paste here where the original object was. It actually pasted it on the active artboard, which is now 3. So to paste it onto artboard 4, I will select artboard 4. You can do that by clicking directly on the artboard. Right now I have artboard number 1 selected, and right now I have artboard number 4 selected. Or you can click directly on whichever artboard you want from the list, and then I'll paste to front again. Now that took a couple of clicks and a couple of keystrokes, and that might be fine if you only want to paste this on 2 out of 20 artboards. But if you want this star to be pasted on all of the artboards in one stroke, you can do it. All you have to do is select it. Again, you can copy it if you want to, but for this I recommend cutting it, and that's Command X. That will make the star disappear. It's still saved on your artboard, and its exact location is recorded with that. And all you have to do is come up to the Edit menu and paste on all artboards. It's a new feature. I believe they added this in CS6. But when you hit this, the star will now be pasted in the exact same location on all of the artboards, including this big artboard over here. Notice how it got pasted into the top left corner over on artboard number 1. If you feel you made a mistake, no problem, just delete it. So that is a good, this has little to do with the alignment palette, which we're talking about in this video. I just thought that it's a great feature, and I thought that it would be helpful to bring it up in this video. But again, if you ever realize that this is in the wrong place and it needs to be centered to artboard, simply select it, make sure that you have artboard number 2 selected, and then hit align center, and it'll move for you. So very useful there. All right, so we'll talk about distribution really fast too. Here's what happens with distribution. You have your yellow stars again. I keep going back to this example, but I've got my stars and I've sort of distributed them all over the place, and you know, they don't line up, and the distance between each star is varying in this case. The distance from star number 1 to star number 2 is who knows, 55 pixels, I think, and from here to here it happens to be more like 87. So they're all different. So how do you get all of this artwork to be perfectly distributed? Now, I've also taken the step to actually align their centers too, but we already talked about how to do that. So how do you get these to be distributed so that the amount of space between them is the same? All you have to do is use the bottom controls on the Align palette, which are distribute objects. And the diagrams here are not so different from the diagrams for alignment. They'll actually show you a little representation or a thumbnail of what is going to happen when you press them. They're very similar to Align, but with distribution, it's just going to give you even spacing in between, either horizontally or vertically. So I'll show you how I got this result here. First, I'm just going to hide it. So I'll take all of these stars and I'm selecting them. And you do have to make sure, the first thing is that you're not aligning to artboard. If you hit a distribute key and you have artboard selected, you will distribute them, but you'll get funky results. Notice how when I pressed that, the first star went all the way over to the far left extreme of the artboard, and the far right star went over to the far right. The distance between these is perfectly distributed. In other words, it's perfectly equal. So the distance between star number 1 and 2 is 211 pixels, and the next one is 211 pixels, and so on and so on and so on. So you get an idea of how it works, but what if you don't want your artwork to be sent all the way over to the extreme side of the artboard? I mean, you might not want that. I know I never do. So I'll just undo a few times, get our stars back to where they were. Okay, so we're back to this sort of, you know, jumble, and I want them to stay relatively where they are, but distributed. So the first thing I'm going to do is hit Align to and choose Selection. That means this selection is what is going to determine the distribution. And then if I hit the same key I did before, which is horizontal, distribute, center, then they'll be evenly spaced, just like jail bars, you know, prison bars. They are evenly spaced based on their vertical center. Of course, they don't all line up perfectly because I haven't hit vertical align center, and we don't have to in this case. Maybe you want to, but what I really want to show you is this new feature that I think was added in CS6. They added yet another little space here, another panel to the Align palette, and it lets you punch in an exact number for your distribution spacing. So if you know, if your client says that you need 50 pixels exactly to be between your stars, you can do it very easily. All you have to do is this. Remember back to 10 minutes ago when I was talking about alignment of objects and making one of the objects a key object or an anchor. We're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to say this far left star, I want this to be my key, so I'll select it. And notice that that famous thick line appears around it. This is telling me that this is my key. And now this button on the Align palette now actually changes to key object. It automatically recognizes that I'm selecting a key object. And then this panel, distribute spacing, is now It comes out of, notice how before it was grayed out. I can't do anything with it. But if I select this key object, now I can choose to distribute these objects based on a finite number. So if I hit this button, if I type in 50 into this slot, they will all be distributed. The second step of that is to hit horizontal distribute space, and they will be horizontally distributed. So now there is a perfect 50 pixel space in between each one of these stars, and the key object did not move at all. If you realize you made a mistake and you say, oh, I want this star to be my key, and I don't want 50, I want 60. Or how about this? What if instead of 50 pixels, you want to change the units and you want to do 1 inch? Then, what do? Well, all you have to do is select your key first, and then type into this panel right here. It might say points, it might say picas, it might say centimeters, whatever unit measurement that is. You just have to type 1 and then IN for inch, and then hit tab. And Illustrator automatically converts 1 inch to 72 points for you. And then the last step is to press horizontal distribute space. And now they are all distributed 72 points or 1 inch perfectly based on our key object right here, which is highlighted. All right, you can do the same thing with distribute spacing to do it vertically. So if I have a number of stars, and I'll just do, maybe 5 stars like this and put them all at different spacing, and I want to distribute these perfectly, I'll say, let's say our top star is exactly in the right place, and I want the next one to be exactly 40 pixels away. I will select it as a key object as step 1. Step 2, I'll type 40 points into distribute spacing. I'll hit tab, and then I'll hit vertical distribute space. And then now all of my objects are distributed. So there you go. That's an overview of how alignment and distribution can work and save you lots of time and lots of headache in Illustrator. I encourage you to open up Illustrator, experiment with it yourself, and hopefully integrate it in your workflow, save yourself a lot of time and effort. Again, thanks for watching. Check out my channel. I've got lots of other free tutorials that detail a lot of the basics of how these panels in Illustrator can work for you, and how you can save yourself time and effort and learn Illustrator. Thanks for watching. I'm Nick with Creation Army TV. Take care.